Hi, this is Patrick, and I want to do my UFO series and alien abduction. I was talking to my cousin the other day, and he said, since you're making content, I want to tell a story that happened to me back in 1981 at Panther Gap, at the property where a lot of my stories come from. But my cousin was staying out there back in 81, and they were growing, and he was up in his garden guarding his stuff um, around the end of the season. He told me that he was sleeping in his garden, and he saw a red light coming up the trail, and he grabbed his shotgun, and after that he doesn't remember anything, but he remembers being in a ship and flying over the river. This property, the river ran through the middle of the property, and he said he remembers being up above the property, way up in a ship, looking down on the river, flying over the river. Um, the next morning, he woke up and he was in his tent, but he had lost that whole evening. Um, there was a dozen people that also had experiences um, that night at that property. There was another guy out there, and his name was Lyle, and he was in a shed, a drying shed, and he was guarding it with no windows. And he said he was in the drying shed. This is in 81. He was in the drying shed, and the shed lit up with a red light through the walls. And he was freaked out because the light was coming through the walls of the shed, and it lit up the shed as bright as day with this red light. He said he grabbed his pistol, and after that, that's all he remembers. He woke up in the morning back in the drying shed. Also, there was a bunch of Koreans that were there from North Korea, and they were all working for this guy out there. And they were all, everyone, this was a giant piece of property. It was a 160-acre piece of property, but then the outskirts around it was all open property. And these Koreans were all working out there, and the UFO flew down to them, and it was so close to them in this valley on the river that they were all freaked out. They were scared to death. Um, they had saw the ship up close, and it scared them. There was, I think there was 4 or 5 guys that were all there and all experienced it. And shortly after that, the season was over, and they left, and they never came back. They didn't want to they didn't want to go back to that property after that. It really freaked them out. But the next day, there was another Korean guy there, and he was out in the broad daylight down off of this flat is right off the river on the Matol River. He was there, and the ship came down in the middle of the day, and it came down so close to him. He came running over to my cousin, which was in a trailer with his best friend, Pw.magiclife, and they we're in the trailer, and he came over, and he was as white as a ghost, and he was screaming about the ship. The ship came down, and he was screaming. He barely spoke English, but he was screaming about that ship. It was a real, like, traumatic for him. And he left like the next day. He didn't even come back. He was scared to death. Whatever it was scared him. um, I had also been out there, and I had seen orbs for years, but this was in the 90s, and I had seen orbs flying around out there like crazy, always flying around back and forth, these lights going back and forth in every direction. And yeah, they were, they moved in a way like no planes or helicopters could move. They moved in like sporadic, and they would come and go and disappear fast. But there were a lot of activity out there. Um, Back in '85, my cousin was telling me a story. I just talked to him yesterday, and he told me a story about, because I wanted to get the facts, but he told me the story that he had, my other cousin. Um, he was also out there, and he said he was in a little shed right out by his house, and he said something came over him, and he was wide awake, but whatever it was, he couldn't move. It like held him, and he was freaked out because he couldn't move. He was like paralyzed by whatever this was, and it had um, coming up into the shed that he was in, and he couldn't move. And then he remembers just being freaked out and waking up in the morning and like remembering it, like, whoa, what happened? It was pretty traumatic for him also. um, these are all stories of people out there at that property. There was a bunch of other people that had experiences too. Um, there was another guy that had a house up on the hill, which was a couple miles away, but um, he had been freaked out so much that he would never stay out at his cabin. He had a nice cabin right on the hill, and he worked out there, but he would literally drive home up to Eureka every night, and he would never stay at his property because he had some crazy experiences out there. But that was out at Panther Gap, and I had seen the orbs out there quite a bit, so I experienced seeing them, but I never had any abduction. My cousin I just talked to the other day, he said, "Oh, I want to give you some content." This happened back in 1981. He said, "I told people about it, but I never really told people the whole story." He said, "Right now, since you're doing content, I'm going to let you know the whole story." And he's like, after I remember the light coming up the trail and going for my gun, he said, after that, he goes, I remember being up in a ship and flying over the river in the valley from way up high. And he's like, yeah, I never really told anybody that story, but since you're doing some content, I thought I would let you know. He's like, I didn't tell anybody because he didn't want people to think he was crazy, but he's like, yeah, really, I was abducted up there at Panther Gap, and there was multiple people that had experiences. The Koreans all had the experience of the ship coming down on the flat, and it was such a strong experience that they all left and they never came back. They went back to North Korea, and they were like, never came back. This was back in '81. But I thought I would share those stories with you guys, and I thought it was a pretty um, cool stories to talk about. Um, I hope you like my stories. Thank you. God bless you. Please give me a like and please follow.